Brenda turned off the engine of her luxurious silver Mercedes-Benz and adjusted her sunglasses before stepping out. The day was clear and busy, as always, in front of her cafe, Java Luxe. The establishment, proudly boasting 2 stories of pure elegance, had become a landmark in the city, attracting everyone from businesspeople in morning meetings to celebrities seeking a casual yet sophisticated refuge. As she walked towards the main entrance, her high heels echoed against the stone pavement. Observing her reflection in the large glass windows that adorned the facade, Brenda felt a familiar sense of pride. She had built this business from scratch, transforming a dream into a glittering reality now frequently featured in reports and constant praise. It was then that a hesitant voice interrupted her thoughts. Brenda turned and saw a young woman standing before her. The woman's hair was somewhat disheveled, and although her clothes were clean, they seemed worn, hinting at difficulties. "Excuse me for bothering you, my name is Fernanda. I was wondering if there are any job openings here at the cafe." "I really need a job," said Fernanda, her voice attempting to mask desperation. Brenda analyzed the woman for a moment. Normally, all hiring was done through the HR manager and not directly by her, but something about Fernanda's sincerity made her stop and listen. "Unfortunately, we don't have any openings at the moment," Brenda replied, noticing the immediate change in Fernanda's expression, which visibly darkened. Fernanda hesitated and then asked, "Could I leave my resume with someone here? Just in case something comes up?" "Sure, you can give it to me. I'll make sure it gets to our manager," Brenda said, accepting the papers Fernanda handed over. "Do you work here?" Fernanda asked, a slight embarrassment coloring her words. Brenda smiled, understanding the confusion. "I'm the owner, Brenda." Fernanda's eyes widened for a second, but she quickly composed herself. "Oh, I'm sorry, I had no idea." "Thank you very much." "You're welcome, Fernanda." "Good luck," Brenda responded before turning to enter the cafe. Walking towards the white marble counter, Brenda passed by the regular customers who greeted her with nods and smiles. She returned the gestures, but her mind was elsewhere. Fernanda, with her simple appearance and direct approach, had made an impression. Brenda knew the difficulty of starting from the bottom, of struggling to be seen and heard. Upon reaching her office on the 2nd floor, she sat behind her large mahogany desk and looked at Fernanda's resume. It wasn't the most impressive she had ever seen, but the young woman's initiative and the spark of determination in her eyes were qualities that didn't show up on paper. Brenda picked up the phone and dialed the number of Clara, her general manager. "Clara, it's Brenda. I'm sending you a resume. It's from a young woman who was here today, Fernanda. We don't have openings now, but I want you to look at her. Maybe we can think of something for the near future." Initiative is something I always value, and she seems to have plenty of it. After hanging up the phone, Brenda allowed herself a moment of reflection. She knew the business world was ruthless, but also firmly believed in the importance of giving opportunities. Who knows? Maybe Fernanda could be one of those success stories that start with a simple act of courage and a direct approach. After all, that's how many great journeys began. On the upper floor of the luxurious Java Luxe Cafe, Brenda found her son Samuel, who was focused on organizing papers and spreadsheets scattered across the large conference table. Samuel, who co-managed the establishment, quickly looked up upon hearing his mother's footsteps. "Mom, is there a problem?" Samuel asked, adjusting his glasses. "Actually, something interesting happened downstairs just now," Brenda began, sitting in one of the chairs around the table. "A young woman named Fernanda approached me asking for a job. She seems to really need an opportunity. Samuel frowned, clearly concerned about the financial implications. "Mom, we've talked about this. We're fully staffed. Hiring someone now simply isn't feasible." Brenda knew the establishment was operating at full capacity in terms of staff, but she also knew that Samuel's comment about not being able to afford another salary was an exaggeration. However, she decided not to prolong the discussion with him at that moment, opting instead to check the situation personally. Brenda went downstairs again and walked through the establishment, observing every detail and every employee in action. The cafe, with its constant buzz and movement, seemed to function like a well-oiled machine, but she knew there was always room for improvement. Entering the kitchen, the sound of running water and clinking dishes and silverware dominated the environment. A young employee, whom Brenda recognized as Lucas, was by the sink, tirelessly tackling a mountain of dirty dishes. Noticing her presence, he quickly dried his hands and greeted her respectfully. "Brenda, can I help with anything?" Lucas asked, clearly exhausted. "Lucas, I was just wondering how you're managing with all these dishes." "It seems like the work never ends," Brenda commented, looking at the pile that seemed never to diminish. "Yeah, it's been pretty tough. I rarely get a break, and the dishes just keep coming," Lucas responded with a tired smile. "An extra hand here would be a blessing, honestly." The feedback was all Brenda needed to hear. Determined, she picked up her phone and called Clara, the general manager, who was always well informed about the operational details of the cafe. "Clara, it's Brenda. I found a position we need to fill immediately. We need someone to help in the kitchen, especially with washing dishes." "Lucas is overwhelmed," Brenda explained with clarity and authority. "Understood, Brenda. Do you have someone in mind?" Clara asked, always ready to take action. "Yes, a young woman named Fernanda. She approached me today seeking an opportunity. Can you prepare everything to hire her? I believe she will be an excellent addition to our team," instructed Brenda. "Perfect, I'll take care of it right away," Clara replied, and Brenda could almost feel the relief in her manager's voice. Hanging up the phone, Brenda felt a quiet satisfaction in making the decision. She knew that despite Samuel's concerns, she had done what was right for her business and for a young woman who needed a chance. As she left the kitchen, Brenda passed through the bustling cafe again, observing the flow of customers and employees, thinking about how each person there had a story and how small actions could mean a lot in someone's life. It was more than just business, it was about making a difference. Brenda arrived early at Java Lux, enjoying the calm of dawn to prepare for the day. The establishment was still closed to the public, and the street was quiet, with only the soft sound of distant cars. However, this calm was interrupted when she saw a figure already waiting eagerly at the front door. It was Fernanda, the new hire. Fernanda, noticing Brenda's arrival, quickly approached with a shy but genuine smile. "Good morning. I arrived a bit early. I didn't want to be late on my first day," Fernanda said. Brenda, impressed by the young woman's punctuality and enthusiasm, returned the smile. "That's great, Fernanda. Let's go inside, and I'll show you everything you need to know." The two entered the cafe, and Brenda led Fernanda directly to the kitchen, where a pile of dirty dishes was already waiting. Without hesitation, Fernanda put on an apron and began washing the dishes with surprising efficiency. Brenda watched, admiring the proactivity and speed with which Fernanda handled the task. In just half an hour, Fernanda had already dealt with the initial pile of dishes. Brenda, who had stepped away to handle some preparations for the day's opening, returned to find the sink clean and organized. "You've finished everything already?" Brenda asked, clearly impressed. "Yes, I tried to be as quick as possible," Fernanda replied, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Fernanda, did you have breakfast?" "You arrived so early," Brenda asked, concerned. No, I didn't have time," Fernanda admitted, a little embarrassed. Brenda immediately turned to one of the employees who was already in the kitchen preparing ingredients for breakfast. "Carlos, can you prepare something for Fernanda to eat? Something nutritious to start the day well." Carlos nodded with a welcoming smile and began preparing a dish. Fernanda watched, visibly touched by Brenda's consideration. "Thank you. This means a lot," Fernanda said. "Don't mention it, Fernanda. I want everyone here to feel at home and have energy for the day," replied Brenda. With that, the two women shared a moment of mutual understanding. As the hours passed, the place began to fill with customers, and the kitchen's pace intensified. Samuel arrived in the middle of the morning and observed the new employee working diligently. Despite Fernanda's efficiency, he shook his head in disapproval, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by Brenda. Samuel approached Brenda and whispered, "Mom, you are very kind. You know, sometimes I think that might be a problem." Brenda looked at her son, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Maybe, Samuel, but it's that kindness that makes Java Lux more than just a cafe. It's what makes us a community." The day continued, and by the end of the afternoon, Brenda could clearly see the positive effects of her decision. The kitchen was more organized, the dishes were continuously cleaned and ready for use, and the staff, including Lucas, seemed less overwhelmed than usual. Observing all this, Brenda felt affirmed in her choice. Fernanda's integration not only eased the team's workload but also brought a new spirit of cooperation and efficiency. Java Lux was more than a workplace, it was a place where people supported and grew together. At the end of the day, that was the true measure of success. The months at Java Lux passed quickly since Fernanda's hiring. With each passing day, Fernanda proved to be more than just a dedicated employee, she was truly exemplary. The transition from dishwasher to waitress had been made so smoothly that it seemed almost natural. Always the first to arrive and one of the last to leave, her commitment and the quality of her work did not go unnoticed. Brenda, always attentive to her team's development, watched with pride as Fernanda grew. She had a special ability to handle customers, bringing a positive energy that seemed to light up the place. It was no wonder that she quickly became a crucial part of the cafe's operations. One quiet afternoon, Samuel, who co-managed the establishment, approached Brenda with an expression of concern on his face. "Mom, we need to talk. We have a problem with the register. One of the employees was fired for not performing their duties correctly. We need someone to cover this position as soon as possible." Brenda nodded, already thinking of possible solutions. "I'll talk to Clara right away," she said, referring to the general manager. Clara, always efficient, informed her that she had just hired a new employee for the waitress position that very day. However, Brenda already had another solution in mind, something that could solve two problems at once. She found Fernanda organizing the dessert counter, her apron impeccably clean and her smile ever present. "Fernanda, I have a new opportunity for you if you're interested," Brenda began in a calm but excited tone. "How would you feel about taking over the register? Your salary would remain the same, but it's a position that requires a lot of responsibility." Fernanda looked surprised, but her response was quick and confident. "Of course, Brenda. I'm ready for the challenge." The transition was swift. The next day, Fernanda was already training for her new role at the register, quickly adapting to her new responsibilities. She seemed to have a natural ability to manage transactions and interact with customers in this new capacity. However, over time, Brenda began to notice signs of fatigue in Fernanda, particularly deepening dark circles under her eyes. Concerned, Brenda approached her during a moment of calm. "Fernanda, is everything really okay? You seem tired." Fernanda hesitated for a brief moment before responding, "Yes, everything's fine. It's just that I started my first semester of business school. It's been a bit challenging to balance studying with work, but I'm managing." Brenda listened attentively, a mix of concern and admiration filling her thoughts. "You're amazing, Fernanda. If you need anything or even need to adjust your hours, please let me know. We want to support you as best we can." Fernanda thanked her with a tired smile, touched by Brenda's genuine concern. Brenda, in turn, felt immense, almost maternal, pride in Fernanda's determination. She had undoubtedly become one of Java Lux's most valuable employees. Although Brenda never revealed her favoritism, it was undeniable that Fernanda held a special place in her heart and in the cafe's dynamics. One quiet night, while Brenda was relaxing at home, her phone rang abruptly, breaking the silence. It was Clara, the manager of Java Lux. With a tone of urgency, she said, "Brenda, I sent some reports to your email. Please take a look as soon as possible. There's something very wrong with the cafe's accounts." Worried, Brenda quickly opened her laptop and accessed her email. Her heart beat a little faster as she clicked on the financial report attachments. The numbers on the screen were alarming. There was a significant deficit that seemed inexplicable, especially considering that the customer flow was stronger than ever. Calling Clara back, Brenda asked, trying to stay calm, "Clara, what do you think is happening? This doesn't make any sense." "From what I see," Clara began, choosing her words carefully, "the only logical explanation is that someone is diverting money from the register, possibly transferring it to a non-company account." Brenda frowned. "But how? Most of our transactions are done by credit card." "Yes, but even so, something is happening. Maybe we should monitor the employees working at the register more closely," Clara suggested before hanging up. After ending the call, Brenda sat, thoughtful. Fernanda was the person who most frequently operated the register. Brenda knew her story, her character, and trusted her implicitly. Could she be wrong? Maybe it was a hasty judgment, but doubt began to eat away at her certainty. In the days that followed, Brenda made more frequent visits to the cafe, discreetly observing activities at the register. Fernanda, in turn, continued her work with the same efficiency and cordiality as always. Nothing in her behavior indicated anything suspicious. She handled transactions with the skill and honesty that Brenda had witnessed since the day she was hired. Even so, the problem with the reports persisted, and someone was clearly committing a crime. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Brenda installed additional cameras focused on the register and reviewed the closing and accounting processes. One afternoon, she called Fernanda for a private conversation in her office, not to accuse her, but to perhaps understand the situation better. "Fernanda, how are you feeling about your work here?" Brenda began, wanting to gauge Fernanda's level of satisfaction. "I'm very happy, Brenda. I feel like I learn more each day," Fernanda replied, clearly unaware of the broader context of the question. "Has anything at the register seemed different or unusual to you? Any discrepancies or anything that doesn't make sense?" Brenda continued, trying to probe delicately. Fernanda thought for a moment before responding, "Not that I've noticed. Everything seems normal, and I follow the guidelines I was given from day one." One restless night, Brenda found herself unable to sleep. Worry about the cafe's finances swirled in her mind, and the need to understand what was happening drove her to act. Determined, she got up, dressed quickly, and drove to Java Lux, her cafe facing inexplicable financial problems. Arriving at the location, the night's silence only amplified the situation's gravity. She unlocked the door, entered, and went straight to the office, where she accessed the security system. Brenda sat in front of the screens and began meticulously reviewing the security camera footage. Hours passed as she searched for any clue that could explain the financial shortfall. After long hours of observation, one detail caught her attention. Fernanda, the employee Brenda held in such high esteem, had peculiar behavior at a specific time. Fernanda consistently disappeared from the camera's view. Additionally, the backpack she used to carry her school materials caught Brenda's attention. The backpack that arrived almost empty in the morning seemed visibly fuller by the end of the day. These details sparked an uncomfortable suspicion in Brenda about Fernanda. Brenda spent the night at the cafe. As the day began, she saw Fernanda arrive for work, carrying the infamous backpack. She greeted Fernanda normally, masking her suspicions and concerns. Brenda knew she needed concrete evidence before making any accusations. The day passed slowly as Brenda observed Fernanda, looking for discrepancies or behaviors that might confirm her suspicions. However, nothing substantial came to light during the cafe's operating hours. Near the end of the day, as the cafe was about to close, Brenda received a call from Clara, the manager. Clara's voice was laden with sadness as she revealed the source of the problem. "Brenda, we discovered who has been diverting the money." "It was Fernanda," said Clara, clearly upset. She explained that there was irrefutable proof that some credit card machines had been configured to transfer money directly into Fernanda Morera's account. Brenda felt a chill run down her spine at hearing Fernanda's name associated with fraud. She thanked Clara for the investigation and hung up, her mind processing the betrayal. Observing Fernanda preparing to leave with her backpack, Brenda felt deeply betrayed. She had welcomed Fernanda and given her opportunities to grow within the company, and now that trust had been broken. Brenda approached Fernanda, still uncertain about how to confront the situation. She needed to resolve this, but each step felt heavy with the weight of disappointment and sadness from being betrayed by someone she had considered not just an exemplary employee, but almost like family. Fernanda, with hurried steps, walked toward the distant bus stop. Brenda watched through the cafe's large glass windows, the suspicion in her heart heavier than the evidence she had. Seeing Fernanda walk away, Brenda saw an opportunity to confront the situation once and for all. She hurried out of the cafe and called after Fernanda before she could get too far. "Fernanda, can I give you a ride to college?" Brenda offered, trying to keep her voice neutral. "There's no need, Brenda. I can take the bus," Fernanda replied quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the offer. "However, I insist," Brenda said, her voice carrying a tone of authority mixed with a trace of irritation she couldn't hide. "Get in the car." Fernanda hesitated, but the firmness in Brenda's voice left no room for refusal. She got in the car, and the two drove toward the college in tense silence. During the drive, Brenda noticed that Fernanda was visibly nervous, constantly fidgeting with her hands and avoiding eye contact. Upon arriving at the college, they found the gates closed. "I didn't know it would be closed today," Fernanda said quickly, a shadow of panic crossing her face. Brenda raised an eyebrow, finding the situation increasingly suspicious. "Don't worry, I'll take you home then," she said decisively before Fernanda could protest again. Reluctantly, Fernanda gave her address, and they continued the journey, enveloped in even thicker silence than before. Upon arriving at Fernanda's house, Brenda was surprised by the simplicity and somewhat deteriorated state of the small home. They both got out of the car, and Brenda, acting more on impulse than courtesy, grabbed Fernanda's backpack. "Let me help with this," Brenda said, more as an excuse to investigate the backpack's contents than with genuine intent to help. Fernanda, realizing the intention behind the gesture, grew even more nervous and tried to gently retrieve her backpack, but Brenda resisted. "What are you hiding, Fernanda?" Brenda questioned, her voice laden with frustration and suspicion. Before Fernanda could respond, Brenda opened the backpack and looked inside. What she saw left her shocked, but not for the reasons she expected. There was no money or incriminating documents, but food, leftovers from the cafe that Fernanda had taken home. For a moment, Brenda was speechless, the weight of her unjust suspicions crashing over her like a cold wave. "Fernanda," she said, her voice low and shaky. I was just taking some leftovers home. I didn't think it would be a problem. I'm sorry if that's not allowed, but..." Brenda, still holding the open backpack, felt a mix of relief and guilt. She had imagined a whole scenario of betrayal where there was nothing but need and Fernanda's attempt to make the best of what she had. The ensuing silence was heavy, with Brenda processing the situation and Fernanda clearly embarrassed and anxious about her boss's reaction. Brenda slowly closed the backpack and handed it back to Fernanda. That afternoon, Brenda and Fernanda stood in front of Fernanda's modest, somewhat run-down home. Everything was very quiet, with only the sound of the wind whispering through the nearby trees. Brenda's car was parked by the curb, and the two women stood beside it, a tense atmosphere between them. Brenda broke the silence, holding Fernanda's backpack in one hand. "Fernanda, I need to apologize to you. I was rude and suspected you without having all the facts." "I'm very sorry for that," said Brenda, her tone laden with sincere regret. Fernanda, visibly relieved by the apology, responded in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry too, Brenda. I was taking food from the cafe secretly. I was ashamed to ask. I only took leftovers that the customers didn't eat. I knew taking freshly prepared food would be wrong, like stealing from you." Brenda listened attentively, the pain in Fernanda's voice only reinforcing how badly she felt about the whole situation. "I understand, Fernanda, and I'm sorry that you felt you needed to do that. You shouldn't have to choose between asking for help and going without." Fernanda looked at the ground, ashamed. "About college, I had to put it on hold because I couldn't afford it anymore. I wanted to tell you, but..." "Don't worry about that now," Brenda interrupted gently. "What matters is that we take care of this. Please, get in the car. I have a plan that might help." Hesitantly, Fernanda got in the car, still unsure of Brenda's intentions. As Brenda drove, Fernanda couldn't help but ask, "Brenda, have you changed your mind about everything? Are we going to the police station?" Brenda, hearing the fear in her voice, let out a small laugh to lighten the mood. "No, Fernanda, nothing like that. We're going to the supermarket. I'll make sure you don't have to worry about food for a while." When they arrived at the supermarket, Brenda grabbed 3 shopping carts and handed them to Fernanda. "Fill these carts with everything you need. I insist that you don't leave here with less than 3 carts full," Brenda said with an encouraging smile. Fernanda, still embarrassed but touched by Brenda's generosity, began to fill the carts. Together, they chose a variety of healthy foods and other necessities. Time passed quickly as they chatted about different products and their preferences. After a long period of shopping, they finally loaded the bags full of groceries back into the car. Brenda then drove Fernanda back home, helping her carry all the groceries inside. "Fernanda, I hope this helps alleviate some of your worries," Brenda said. "I don't know how to thank you, Brenda. This means so much to me," Fernanda responded, clearly moved by the unexpected help. Brenda gave a warm smile. "You don't need to thank me. I just want you to know that you can count on me. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again." As they entered Fernanda's home, Brenda was impressed by the neatness and simplicity of the environment. The walls showed signs of wear, but everything was clean and organized, a reflection of Fernanda's care. The bags full of groceries hung from their arms, promising nourishment and comfort for the coming days. In the corner of the room, Brenda noticed an elderly couple sitting in wheelchairs. They lit up with smiles when they saw Fernanda, and the young woman quickly introduced them. "These are my grandparents," Fernanda said softly and lovingly. "They depend on me for many things." Fernanda's grandparents waved to Brenda, their eyes shining with gratitude and affection. Brenda approached, greeting them warmly, touched by the family scene so full of affection and challenges. At that moment, a woman appeared from the kitchen, leaning on a crutch. She was around 40 years old and was missing a leg. Fernanda made the introductions. "This is Lucia, our neighbor. She takes care of my grandparents while I'm at work." Lucia, with a welcoming smile, extended her hand to Brenda. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she said, and Brenda shook her hand, feeling a wave of respect for the woman. "Fernanda tells me you've been a great help here," Brenda commented, looking at Lucia with appreciation. "I do what I can," Lucia replied modestly. "Fernanda has been an angel to us. The leftovers she brings from the cafe help a lot, although I'm glad you brought something even better today." The conversation flowed naturally, with everyone expressing their gratitude for the groceries Brenda had provided. Fernanda's grandparents and Lucia shared that the food leftovers weren't always ideal, but were helpful in difficult circumstances. As they chatted, Lucia briefly disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a plate of cake. "I hope you like it," she said, offering Brenda a piece. As Brenda tasted the cake, she closed her eyes, savoring the texture and flavor. "This is divine," she exclaimed in surprise. "Where did you buy it?" Lucia laughed. "I made it. Cooking has always been my passion." Fascinated, Brenda encouraged Lucia to share more about her culinary skills. Lucia then began to describe the recipe and process of making the cake, her passion evident in every detail she shared. Brenda, increasingly amazed, suggested, "Have you ever thought about selling your cakes? They are truly exceptional." Lucia shook her head. "I'd love to, but I don't have the means to start something like that on my own." The conversation between the two women blossomed, with Brenda seeing potential not just in Lucia's cake, but in Lucia herself as an entrepreneur who just needed a chance. The wheels in her mind started turning, thinking of ways to help Lucia turn her passion into a real possibility. That serene afternoon, Brenda and Fernanda stood outside Fernanda's house, where they had shared revealing moments. As they prepared to say goodbye, Brenda brought up a subject that had been troubling her, the embezzlement of funds from the cafe. "Fernanda, before I go, I need to tell you something serious. We've discovered that money is being siphoned from the cafe," Brenda said, looking directly into Fernanda's eyes, searching for any sign of prior knowledge about the matter. Fernanda expressed sadness and concern. "That's terrible, Brenda. I'll do everything I can to help find out who's behind this," she responded sincerely. Brenda thanked her and, after a friendly farewell, got into the car. A few minutes after leaving, her phone rang. It was Clara, the cafe manager, with a direct question. "Brenda, have you reported Fernanda yet?" Clara asked anxiously. Brenda felt a pang of frustration. "It wasn't her, Clara. I've already told you that." Clara, however, didn't seem convinced. "But Brenda, the money was going to an account in her name." "How do you explain that?" "I don't know how this is happening, but I'm sure Fernanda is innocent," Brenda replied firmly, ending the conversation so she could think more clearly. A month passed since the incident, and although Brenda continued her daily routine at the cafe, she was secretly working on a bold plan. She replaced all the credit card machines in the establishment and redirected all the transaction money to Fernanda's account. It was a trap to catch the real culprit, a test of her own creation to confirm Fernanda's innocence, whom she trusted completely. Fernanda was aware of the plan and agreed to return all the money once the true suspect was revealed. One day, during this tense wait, Samuel, Brenda's son and co-administrator of the cafe, burst into her office, clearly agitated. "Mom, Fernanda is stealing the cafe's money," he exclaimed, almost shouting, his face pale with anguish. Brenda, calm in the face of her son's accusation, looked at him and asked, "How do you know that, Samuel?" Samuel hesitated, his confusion evident. He didn't respond. "Son, only 3 people knew what I did, me, the manager, and Fernanda herself," Brenda continued, her voice firm. "It was you, wasn't it, Samuel? When I redirected all the money to her, you realized it was no longer going to the fake account you created in Fernanda's name, so you decided to accuse her to divert suspicion from yourself." Samuel remained silent, unable to defend himself. The truth of what Brenda said was undeniable. He finally lowered his gaze, overcome by guilt and the reality of his actions. Brenda, despite the shock and sadness of discovering that her own son was behind the scheme, remained composed. She knew she needed to handle the situation with justice, despite the pain of seeing her son involved in such betrayal. The silence between mother and son was heavy, laden with the weight of the newly revealed truth and the consequences that would follow. Brenda knew that the next decisions would be crucial, not only for the integrity of her business, but also for her relationship with Samuel. On that cold, dark night, the growing tension in Brenda's family finally reached its breaking point. The past few months had been difficult for her, dealing with unexplained financial problems at the cafe. Brenda, however, could never have imagined that her own son, Samuel, and a friend of his were behind the scheme that was draining resources from her establishment. Samuel and his friend, a skilled hacker, had started by taking small amounts of money from the cash register. Initially, they were just bills easy to hide among the restaurant's normal expenses, but as the use of cash decreased and credit card transactions became more frequent, the two adapted. Samuel's hacker friend developed a method to divert amounts of money from credit card transactions to a fake account they created in Fernanda's name, the dedicated cafe employee. The situation worsened when an employee, noticing discrepancies in the accounts, threatened to expose everything. Samuel, desperate to keep his secret safe, saw no other way but to fire the employee, supposedly for incompetence, but in reality, to cover up the case. Samuel and his friends' plan seemed foolproof, because if they were ever caught, they could simply blame Fernanda, who knew nothing about the account in her name. However, Samuel's reckless spending on parties and luxuries began to increase, leading to significant losses at the cafe. After discovering the truth, Brenda was devastated. She couldn't believe her own son was involved in something so despicable. At home, alone, she cried while pondering what to do. The decision was difficult, but she knew she couldn't let the situation continue. With a heavy heart, Brenda called Samuel. "Samuel, you need to leave the house." "I'm blocking all your cards," she said with a firm voice that hid deep sadness. When Samuel arrived home, he found his things packed in a suitcase outside. He tried to open the door but couldn't. Brenda had changed the lock. Desperate, Samuel begged to come in, to explain, to ask for forgiveness. "Mom, please, I can explain," he shouted from the door. "There's nothing you can say that will change what you did, Samuel. This is all I can do for you now," Brenda replied, her voice muffled through the closed door. Inside the suitcase, Samuel found only a symbolic amount of money, enough to ensure he wouldn't go hungry, but nothing more. It was the last help Brenda was willing to offer her son who had betrayed her trust so gravely. With no options and no more tears to cry, Samuel took the suitcase and left. He wandered the streets aimlessly, the reality of his actions finally hitting him. The weight of his mistakes, the loss of his family, and an uncertain future were now his only companions as he walked under the cold city lights. In the days following the painful decision to expel Samuel from home, Brenda's life took a turn towards renewal and hope. As she walked through the Java Luxe Cafe, which had been the scene of so many dramas and now of new beginnings, she was approached by a customer who seemed particularly delighted with a part of the menu. "Your cakes are amazing. How do you make them so special?" the customer praised, their eyes shining with a mix of curiosity and delight. Brenda smiled gratefully for the recognition. "Thank you. I'm planning to open a bakery dedicated exclusively to cakes soon," she revealed, while her eyes searched for Lucia, who was chatting animatedly with some of the chefs. "What's the secret then?" asked the customer, following Brenda's gaze. "There she is," said Brenda, pointing to Lucia, now without her crutch. Lucia moved more easily thanks to the prosthetic Brenda had bought for her. "Lucia isn't just an employee. She'll be my partner in the new venture," the customer expressed admiration, congratulations before bidding farewell, mentioning their eagerness for the future bakery's opening. Heading up the stairs to the office, Brenda encountered Fernanda and another recently hired employee to replace Samuel. Fernanda, now in an apprentice position, was preparing to co-manage the cafeteria soon. Though nervous, her expression also showed enthusiasm and gratitude. With a better salary, she had returned to college and rented a more comfortable home to live with her grandparents and a caregiver. While watching Fernanda grow in her new role, Brenda couldn't help but worry about Samuel. Despite her actions, she still felt the need to protect her son in some way, so she hired a detective to keep her informed about his whereabouts. Samuel, on his part, faced a new reality. He had found a simple job paying only minimum wage. It was little, but enough for him to share a small house with 4 other individuals. Deep down, Brenda knew her son needed to go through these hardships to truly learn the value of things he had previously taken for granted. This transition phase for Brenda was marked by a complex mix of emotions. While she saw Fernanda flourish and Lucia embark on a new journey as an entrepreneur, concern for Samuel still cast a shadow over her heart. However, she recognized this was a necessary part of Samuel's growth, a tough but essential path. Among the documents and plans scattered around the office, Brenda felt increasingly confident that she was building something good not only for herself but also for the people around her, whom she had come to call family. As she prepared Fernanda for a leadership position and worked on plans for the new bakery with Lucia, Brenda realized that despite the challenges and pains of the past, she was paving the way for a promising future. Great story, isn't it? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, leave your comments below about what you thought and what you'd like to hear in the next video. Big hug to everyone and see you soon!